I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Every murder is the tale of a city. I don't believe there's a better world than this one.
This is the police.
I think this is the only one we got. How about I buy you a drink?
Call me.
I know that look. Yeah, if anyone would.
Feels like we're putting Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Hands up!
There's another body. If I don't take you, you'll never know.
I want you in charge of this field trip.
What went wrong out there?
Everything.
Hey, don't! We need an airship now!
You break the rules, disobey orders.
Think I'm coming apart?
Focus, detective. Your future is on the line.
Is it true your mom was a prostitute and somebody killed her?
Detective, weren't you avenging your mother's death?
You got a lot of nerve.
I've been really lucky that I've had a succession of detectives that are willing to help me, and in helping me, it's much more than, you know, this is how we do it, or this is the procedure, or this is the science, or whatever. You know, that all that stuff's important, but it's window dressing on character. That's what I'm looking for, and spending time with detectives who are really dedicated. You start drawing that character, and the luck came in that it's almost like a succession. One detective who's now retired connected me with his partner, and then that partner ended up being partnered with a new homicide detective named Mitzi Roberts.
Before I came on, I was a bartender, and then I went on to manage a chain of restaurants. But in my capacity of managing these restaurants, and I had moved out to the Valley, and these LAPD officers used to come in, and I formed friendships with them, and I was always kind of intrigued by crime, and especially like serial killers and murderers. They were like, hey, you should think about becoming a cop. It's a good job. It's secure. You make pretty good money. It's exciting. Every day is different. And I was like, well, I don't know, but can I talk to murderers? And they're like, well, you can be a homicide cop, you know, if that's what you want to do. So I was like, it might be something I'm interested in.
I always try to look for a single word to describe my main characters, and Perry Bosch always said he's relentless, and what I drew from Mitzi Roberts was this fierceness. I think she's fierce when she sees some kind of injustice, and that really, you know, gets her going, and I see that, and it inspires me. And so eventually it came to the point where, boy, I'm 62 years old now. How many more books will I write? I've just kind of felt like before I check out, I should do something new. I decided to write about a female detective, and lo and behold, here's a detective who can tell me a lot about what that life is like. Why not go in that direction when it's right there in front of you? About
6 years ago, he graciously invited me to consult with him on his books, and then that sort of segued into Bosch. So we've just developed this great friendship, and to me a mentorship, because I learned so much from him about the business outside of my business, which is detective work and homicide.
What I have always found interesting is the little stuff, the little cases that she remembers, and victims that were not, you know, the victims of serial killers and so forth, and the sympathies she's had.
Not to quote Mike, but to quote Mike, because it's true, everyone counts or nobody counts, because once you start to put more value on one person's life than another, then you're just not as effective as an investigator. The way I see it, I see a lot of female detectives out there that have done more than me. I feel I look up to as what and who I aspire to be as a detective. So just that I have this opportunity, and that I had the chance to meet Michael and be that inspiration, and also to help him. Overall, it's just humbling and fun. It's incredibly fun.
As a writer, you're constantly throwing out a net and hoping to catch something that inspires you, and it was right there in front of me. The book comes out and it inspires some people, then that's fantastic. If it draws attention to this really good detective, that's also fantastic. But as we both know, she doesn't need me to draw any attention to her. She does that on her own with the cases that she solves.
I want to speak for everybody here for a minute before I ask you a question. May I do that?
Sure.
Speaking for everybody, when I read one of your books, when I'm done, I think I could pass the LAPD lieutenant's exam. And I mean that as a compliment. You know a lot about police work.
I've gotten a few thank yous from lieutenants in the LAPD.
Any complaints?
No, not that I recall.
I'm going to take a wild stab here. When I read your books, and in Dark Sacred Night particularly, you use what have to be real police anecdotes as part of the background of the story. And we haven't talked about this, and if I'm wrong, I'll feel like an idiot. But you have a break-in, an apparent break-in of a strip club, which it turns out Detective Ballard discovers is some teenage boys on the roof of the strip club looking through the skylight just to see naked women. That has to be true.
It's true.
You weren't one of those teenage boys, though.
No,
That's not
no.
like back in Florida. Or anything.
No, Ballard is based on a real detective, and she told me that story. A real detective who had worked on the midnight shift and
The Late Show.
The Late Show, and has lots of stories from it. That's why the whole Ballard character came out of hearing some of these stories, and the idea that, for about 25 years I've been writing about Harry Bosch, who's a murder detective, so it was murder, and that's great. The stakes are always high, there's high danger, and it has all the ingredients you want to have in a book, but when Detective Mitzi Roberts started telling me these stories, I realized I could have both, because on The Late Show, you handle anything that comes up, from kids looking through skylights at a strip club to murders, and so it offered a great variety. In addition to that idea that I've been looking for who's Harry, who does Harry hand the mission off to?
Also on The Late Show, Detective Ballard.
It's true.
Right?
Every story in there is true, but go ahead.
Well, she goes out to investigate what looks like a murder. Woman in her bathroom, dead, disfigured. It looks like a very brutal murder, and could have been a medical examiner who gave you this, or it could have been a detective. It was an accidental death, and the cat ate her face.
Right.
That has to be real.
It's happened.
Okay. So you're writing nonfiction, but very well.
Well, I guess everyone, when their head hits the pillow at night, has a internal view of who they are. And I haven't been a real reporter, like writing newspaper stories, for almost 25 years, if I do the math right. Yeah, almost 25 years, but I just feel I'm a journalist, and there's a lot of journalism in the books, and Harry Bosch is a made-up character, but I think his feet are planted firmly in a real Los Angeles, and it's real in terms of streets and restaurants and so forth, but it's also real in terms of procedure and politics and bureaucracy and all those things. And that's it's all because, I was a reporter and I have a handle on that kind of stuff, or think I do, but it's also, I think, the best way of delivering a character. Like, like you want someone like the chief of police to call up and act like Bosch is real. And I think the way you do that is to take this fictional person and solidly plant that person in a real world, make it as real as possible.
And you have a term, this isn't a police term, on Hollywood Boulevard, the runaways, the drug addicts, the homeless, or the people who are street people, human tumbleweeds. And how evocative is that? But our Harry Bosch and our Renee Ballard, it doesn't matter to them who the victim is, because everybody counts or nobody counts.
Right.
Everybody knows that. Where's that come from?
Well, it kind of starts with Raymond Chandler. Most writers of crime fiction hold him up and his essay, The Simple Art of Murder, as the Bible. And so, and part of that is that, your protagonist should have a code that he or she lives up to, and no matter what the pressure or the obstacles in front of them. And so, when I was putting together Harry Bosch, many years ago, I was trying to come up with a code. I actually didn't ever mention it until I think the third book. And it was just, it's a credo of basic fairness. Treat everybody, you can go back to the Bible, do unto others. I just wanted him, he didn't have a fair shake growing up, and he had a mother who got murdered and she didn't count. It became very clear to him when he became a cop, if he didn't know already, she did not count. And that fires him, it fires his engines, and he's always going to be a guy who will believe that, everybody counts or nobody counts in this society.
You mentioned, and we're in Los Angeles, so how can we not mention, you mentioned Raymond Chandler's essay, A Simple Art of Murder, is this touchstone for crime fiction. And he wrote in that, down these mean streets, a man must walk who is not himself mean. It could also now be a woman if he were writing today. Down these mean streets, a man or a woman must walk who is not himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid. Well, there's Harry Bosch, yes?
That's Harry Bosch and many other people, but that's the starting point. And I read that when I was like 19 or something, and that gets you right in the heart. You want to be that person that is not tarnished or afraid, and that's why that's one of many reasons, but that's one reason why when I decided at 19 I wanted to be a writer. I didn't say I want to be a writer. I said I want to be a crime writer. Very specifically, that was my goal from the beginning.
Maybe because I'm a former journalist, I can write anywhere. So, I would love to be in my office at home, but because I work on a TV show in Los Angeles and I live in Florida, I'm on planes a lot. So I can write anywhere is what I like to say. I'm a warrior. I write every day, and I can write wherever I'm at. I don't have any rituals anymore. I think all that stuff has been stripped away as I do this more and more. Early in my career, I had a bunch of rituals. I used to listen to a specific song, for example, a Frank Morgan saxophone solo that I thought put me into the Harry Bosch mode. I would listen to that every day before starting to write. I don't even do that anymore. To me, it's just all about dropping into the creative mode and getting to work. And here's a ritual. I usually finish my day in the middle of a sentence because it's so easy to finish that sentence the next day and get going. No, I didn't. It was that process that I went through when I was in college, and I'd always loved reading. I always felt that I was creative, but when I went off to university, I went to get an engineering degree, and I got sidetracked when I saw that movie, The Long Goodbye. I'm the wrong guy to ask how to plan a book. I get an idea and I carry it around in my pocket for a while, and I think about it every now and then, and when I come up with the ending, so I always have the A and the Z, and when I have those, then it's time for me to start writing, and I fill in all the letters in between. So I don't really have a plan, I don't have an outline. I just get this instinctive feel that this story could go the distance and I might be able to do something pretty entertaining with it.